You might have heard some buzz around Michael Shanks' directorial debut, Together, a body horror film which has debuted on Rotten Tomatoes with a 100% critic score. On the surface level, the film presents a story about a troubled couple who, after moving to the countryside and falling into a cave while on a hike, are able to escape and make their way home, but unwillingly begin to physically merge together. If you look a bit deeper, this is more than just your average gimmicky horror film. There's a lot of hidden meaning along with some disturbing and thought-provoking psychological themes explored through the events in the film. In this video, I'm going to get into them. So of course guys, major spoiler warning ahead for Together. If you haven't seen this film yet, I recommend saving this video to your watch later, and if you can, try and watch it in a cinema full of people. If you like the substance, you'll like this movie. So throughout the film, we see Tim and Millie, played by Dave Franco and Alison Brie respectively, a couple that have been together for years now. And from the start of the movie, we can see that they're not quite right for each other. Millie proposes to Tim and he awkwardly hesitates to say yes, embarrassing her in front of a bunch of people. When they're out hiking together, he doesn't seem capable or particularly concerned for her welfare. It feels as if both characters have fallen into staying in the relationship through comfort and the fear of being alone, rather than actually being a good fit for each other. Millie remembers Tim's romantic gestures at the start of their relationship, but they're a distant memory. Tim appears afraid of commitment, intimacy, and closeness, but at the same time, he's still drawn to Millie. One of the biggest telltale signs of Tim's fear of commitment is when we later learn in the past that he discovered his mum in bed with his father's rotting corpse. She'd gone crazy after his death, not being able to let go. I really think that explains why Tim is so afraid to fully give himself to the relationship with Millie, for fear of losing himself in it like he saw his mother did with his father. And Millie, on the other hand, she's so unhappy, but she just continues to cling on to Tim, hoping that something's gonna change despite his clear flaws. All of that is important context in understanding how I think the body horror aspects of this film are representative of Millie and Tim's relationship dynamic, as well as a lot of romantic relationships in real life. They're both unwillingly clinging to each other, metaphorically stuck together, and with each passing day, each year they spend together, as it is in relationships, it becomes harder and harder to separate. There's a great saying that I often think about when I contemplate these ideas, and it goes something along these lines. The longer that you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive that it is to get home. And I think that applies perfectly here, because the longer that Tim and Millie stay together, the harder that it is for them to break up. And the fact that they begin to physically merge together, their bodies sticking like magnets, is a physical representation of this idea. So, the ending. It's pretty shocking when we see the couple choose to give in to this bizarre physical affliction, grotesquely fusing into each other's bodies, and a few moments later we see what appears to be the result of this metamorphosis. Both Tim and Millie merged into one person, just like we've learned that Jamie is Millie's co-worker at the school and their new neighbor. A little bit more on Jamie in a minute, but first, what does that ending mean? Well, I think you can view it in two ways. I think you can view this whole thing as a bit of a Kafkaesque commentary on having children. In a way, the person that you see answering the door at the end of the film is sort of like a child of both Tim and Millie. The combination of their DNA, their likeness, and their personality, I'm assuming. When you think about it a certain way, the whole idea of procreation, intimacy, sex, all of it can seem a little bit, I wouldn't use the words gross or disgusting, but when you think about it in a certain light or look at it just in a certain way, the idea of it all can seem a bit bizarre, if you kind of get what I mean. It can be messy, it can be embarrassing, and there's an enormous physical change and anatomical processes involved in all of it, especially for women when it comes to bearing children. I think this movie and the body horror elements captures that kind of feeling perfectly in a way that I just can't quite describe. But there's one scene in this that I know that you know what I'm talking about that I will not forget about, and that scene alone is a reason to watch this in a packed cinema. I think that you can also view the ending in a very bleak way as well. Both Tim and Millie seem to be in physical pain as their bodies distort and merge into each other, their bones and organs crush together, all to form this new person that we meet in the final shot of the film. This can be seen as a representation of what happens when you form a lasting intimate or romantic relationship with someone. Sometimes you can give so much of yourself to the other person and vice versa that you both end up becoming someone who's almost unrecognizable to who you were when you first met the other person. This can be a beautiful thing, like we see the character of Jamie insist on, given his own status as a merged person. The cult that we learn that he comes from seems to worship this concept of true union between two souls and the idea that we're all halves looking for our soulmate to join with and become one person. And maybe for Tim and Millie, this does work out, but if you think back to the missing couple in the film who Tim stumbles upon, they're out here looking like the monster from the end of The Substance. And I think their predicament is a poignant example of what can happen when you bond in that way with the wrong person. It can be incredibly harmful to both parties, and it can warp and distort your feelings and sense of self, leaving you to feel just as trapped as Tim and Millie seem to be at the start of the film, perpetually unhappy. I think that the movie's trying to put a bit more of a positive spin on Tim and Millie while leaving it a bit ambiguous at the same time, but I just can't help thinking back to how disturbing their merging scene was. The fact that Tim merges with Millie to save her from bleeding out, to me, can be representative of a toxic relationship scenario, when a partner stays with another out of fear of hurting them, not because of true love and desire, rather through refusing to accept the necessary pain of losing them forever in a way, a symbolic death of sorts, which Millie faces in the film before Tim chooses to save her. The image of the saw and the brutality of the characters trying to cut each other apart once attached forms a poignant metaphor for how difficult and painful it can be to end a relationship once you're in one. So what does Jamie's cult represent? The church that Tim and Millie accidentally stumble upon that leads them to drink the water that causes them to begin to merge? Well, I think Jamie himself represents the idea of how once you lose a partner, you're forever changed and altered by them. Jamie even speaks about this in the film as if he's lost the partner that he merged with. And I think it's an effective representation of that concept that some people do believe that all your romantic partners or intimate partners are somehow going to leave some kind of impression on you, your being, your soul, or even just your mind or in your memories. I think the cult represents the romanticization of that idea, but through Tim and Millie, the missing couple, and Jamie's violent actions at the end of the film by cutting Millie's arm, causing Tim to save her by merging with her, I think that exposes the dark underbelly of worshipping those concepts. Sometimes, maybe it doesn't work out. Sometimes, you're not meant to be with someone even though you really want to be. Or maybe, if you try hard enough, you can make it work in some circumstances and stay connected with someone forever. Every relationship is so nuanced. I think that this movie leaves it up to you to decide which is the better alternative. And I would love to hear what you guys think of these ideas, or which one you think is the better alternative, in the comments below. Two fun little final facts for you guys. The director of the film, Michael Shanks, is actually a fellow Australian, and back in the day, I used to watch his YouTube channel. It was awesome, and it inspired me to get into visual effects and filmmaking. It's called Tim Tim Fed, so the fact that the main character played by Dave Franco is called Tim is a bit of an Easter egg, I reckon, guys. And it's also very cool how both Dave Franco and Alison Brie are actually married in real life. It adds a really interesting element to the context of the film. And finally, something very cool for me personally. During university, I was editing 2 student short films where the farmer at the start of this film, played by Sonny Wallier, I was actually on set with him once and got to edit another film with him in it. So that was really cool to see him on screen. I hope he has a great career ahead of him. Hopefully more Hollywood films to come. And also, so much of this film was shot in my home state of Victoria, Australia. So that was super cool to see. So overall, guys, I'm going to give Together 3.5 stars out of 5, and that could increase to a 4 on rewatch. I do think that there were just some moments in the script, some dialogue that felt very stilted and a bit awkward. I also think that sometimes the pacing at just certain moments was a little bit slow, but that could be me nitpicking, because underneath all of that, this film really masterfully in some ways explores some very interesting ideas in a very unique and creative way. So I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.